You are the solution. This is the method. The evolution of government. The evolution of democracy.
Aloha! We are back at the National General Assembly of the United States YouTube channel. We're still a show without any name. I don't know if anybody's noticed that yet, but we are the National General Assembly of the United States YouTube channel, but we are the show without a name. So one of these days, maybe we'll have to have a contest to figure out what we should call this show. Right now, I'm just calling it The Show. So welcome to the show. Welcome back. It's been a little while. Apologize for my hiatus. I've been a little bit sick lately. In fact, we even had a positive COVID test in my home, which I was not positive, but that's kind of good or bad depending on who it is you're talking to. As the parent, it's no fun watching your kids suffer and not being able to do anything about it. So wouldn't want to wish that on anybody out there. Everybody get vaccinated, stay safe. Anyway, today I have a fantastic guest. We've been talking about initiatives a lot lately. And, really the purpose of this show is to put some activists out there in the spotlight. Activism is kind of a thankless endeavor for a lot of people. And we want to make sure that we thank these people for doing what they do, give them some attention, and hopefully inspire others to follow in their footsteps and make some important changes in their own communities. And in this world where all kinds of problems are piling up, it's hard to believe that we can take on any powerful interests out there and be successful. And today I have a guest that had a giant, a global economic giant in their backyard, causing some trouble. And he and some others helped manage to motivate the people of Maui to defeat a multinational corporate giant of Monsanto. So here today, I'm welcoming Sam Small from MauiCauses.org. Aloha, Sam. Really
Aloha.
good to see you. I came across a video on my YouTube feed, and it was you and me from an interview from 2015. And I started watching it, and you were talking about that Maui initiative. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to get Sam Small on the show to talk about this. This was a huge, huge deal. Thank you very much for joining us on the show here today.
Sure. Happy to return the favor. You were a guest on my show, and now I'm get to be a guest on your show. That works.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to have you on my show too, as well. What you did out there. It's almost a shame that people aren't being constantly reminded of what you guys did out there, because it is the classic David versus Goliath story. How many people do you have populating the island of Maui right now?
I think
couldn't be that many.
Yeah, the voting population, I think, well, the population is probably up. It used to be 84,000, 86. We're probably up in the 90,000 full-time residents that would be eligible to vote.
Right. So that's across the entire island. Most people that might be watching this are probably living in a city that's larger than that. So it's a pretty low population, people that are actually living there. And you had, of all challenges, you had Monsanto, a global agricultural giant, the global agricultural giant out there. And if you could give our viewers a little background at what Monsanto was actually doing out there and why you guys decided to take action.
Well, Hawaii is in a unique position because of its geography. We have 3 growing seasons. We're a tropical climate, and nowhere else in the United States do agricultural companies have the opportunity to run their seed research production as aggressively as here in Hawaii. And so that was, realized back in the 50s, and by a teacher at the University of Hawaii, who started inviting all of the seed companies to come here to do their research, because they could do it at an accelerated pace. And so there were hundreds of little boutique seed companies here. And in the 80s, 90s, Monsanto, Pioneer, Dow, all started buying up those seed companies, because when the Supreme Court made that fatal mistake to say that you can patent a life form, well, then it was off to the races. And Monsanto, started with their genetic modifications that are only designed, to make their crops be able to tolerate Roundup, glyphosate, because they had so much of those chemicals left over from the Vietnam War. It's the same stuff that was in Agent Orange. And it's, providing the same terrible, catastrophic health impacts as it did to the troops in Vietnam that suffered from Agent Orange exposure. So they had that stuff left over. They did a very good job of crafting an opportunity for them to be able to sell their product with impunity. That's where we are today. The EPA, the FDA are all heavily influenced by Monsanto. They continue to be able to, poison us. So here in Hawaii and on Maui specifically, they have agricultural lands where they were using as test plots. So they've got open air experiments going, and they're spraying various different cocktails of chemicals to see what their impact would be. It's how they want to be able to spray as much pesticide and herbicides on their crops, kill everything else but leave their crops. And so that's the monocrop culture that they're engaged in, which is a total farce. It's absolutely the exact wrong way to farm.
Right.
Soil nutrients and the soil biome is integral to the crop's health. If you have any interest in that, please seek out Korean natural farming as a technique, because they've done a masterful job of finding every way possible to support what goes on in the soil, the mycorrhizal fungus in the soil. That's what the farmer can feed. Farmers don't have the tools to feed the plants directly. That stuff, the fertilizers that they do offer commercially are way too coarse, it's a sledgehammer. It's not,
right.
That all needs to be broken down. And the only way that it gets broken down and delivered to the plant is in the soil. There's a symbiotic relationship between the plant and the local mycorrhizal fungus that is, what makes everything work. And Roundup, glyphosate, was originally patented as a weak antibiotic. It kills everything in the soil. And so it's absolutely the wrong way to farm. So Monsanto was here actively, doing research, and the FDA and the EPA, pesticides have labels. And they have, if it's a dangerous chemical, they have, very prescribed ways that you're supposed to tank up that chemical and apply it. And so tanking is a thing in the agricultural world. What you tank up in a specific tank But nobody seems to care if you've got one chemical in this tank and another chemical in that tank. And then
Right.
you spray them within hours of each other, and they don't have any clue as to how these two different chemicals might interact with each other in the field. They have
Right.
they don't do any research on that because they don't have to. And so they were spraying these chemical cocktails, sometimes 4 or 5 different chemicals at once. They just tank them individually, and the EPA says that that's okay. Well, we live
Right.
downwind of that. This is a small island, so we've got people that are living downwind of where Monsanto is doing all of this open field experimentation. So,
Right.
our primary motivation was to create a investigation, studies, safety studies, reasonable safety studies. And this was very germane to our initiative, because some said, "Oh, you have to ban. You want to ban Monsanto." And it's like, you know what? We don't have the science to call for a ban. We don't know. And that's the question. We want to know. Everybody should know. And the only way to know is to actually do some safety studies. And so we called for a temporary moratorium. Talk about trying to educate a community on what the hell a temporary moratorium.
Right. Well, I
You know,
think even at the time, I was living out on the Hawaii island at the time, and Monsanto had designated our islands as environmental sacrifice zones, and
great.
that is really what made my ears perk up and say, "Okay,
Yeah.
there's something really wrong going on here."
Not a lot of people that live there. So if we kill them all by some stupid mistake that we make, it's not going to be so bad.
Right. Right.
That's,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That was what was going on. So now you and I kind of put you on the spot here with the title of the show,
yeah.
being that Sam Small defeated Monsanto. It was
Oh,
a group of people out there and an island of people who got out and
and
really
more.
fought back against Monsanto. Not
Yeah.
just
And
you alone,
no,
but
oh God,
again, we want
no.
to applaud you for
We
your efforts.
were, yeah, but well, I'm a media guy, and I took control of the media production for the Shaka movement. And so, 85% of what the public saw from our specific initiative, I produced.
Yes, really good
Working.
work too.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, you can see that the entire campaign is uploaded at voteyesmaui.org. If anybody wants to take a look at that, there's yard signs, there's bumper stickers, there's commercials, there's documentaries, there's radio commercials, every form, pamphlets, every form of media that we could come up with. We tried to push that out in a unified way. I try and do nice
Mhm.
work. And I think we did a pretty good job of having a brand. It was very important for me to want to brand this so that it was not just a one-time thing. That we're
Right,
putting this time and energy into developing a movement. We called it the Shaka movement,
right.
and wanted that to persist after this individual election. And I have a super big warning to anybody that's creating a community-based organization, because we screwed up. We were there were the initiative was the brainchild of three individuals, uh, Joe Marshala, Bruce Douglas, and Satya Douglas were sleeping out on the stage of a Burning Man kind of event at 3:00 in the morning, and they were like, this all just kind of came to them that hey, we could actually do this. Monsanto is potentially harming our community, and we could create a community initiative to do that. And they
Exactly.
and yeah, I mean, that's how it was born. I was the fourth person on board. Once they showed me that they had Joe Marshallo is excellent writer. They did great research, and they wrote a body of legislation calling for the moratorium. And once I was able to see that, hey, that they really got something here. This is something that we can actually build a legitimate campaign around. Well, so that's when I got involved, and I became the media director to just bring it all together and put a face on it for the public to be able to understand what we were trying to do. And it was very, very difficult because, Monsanto, I got into it. Hey, look, GMOs. I'm an omnivore, and I don't have any food allergies. I guess I'm lucky.
Right.
But I understand people who do have food allergies, but the genetic manipulation that they do. And I did a lot of research on this, and there is no transfer of genetics between all of these different species and stuff. So this notion that, their genetic manipulations are going to migrate into the wider community, that stuff really doesn't seem to happen as far as I can tell. What I was concerned about, my personal motivation in this, was that the chemical pesticide and the cocktails of untested pesticides that they were putting into our local environment. For me, that's what it was all about. This fear that people have of all things genetically modified, honestly, I don't share that fear. Some of the stuff, it's abused because they're using the genetic modification process to be able to withstand pesticides and herbicides. I think that's screwed up. But some of the insulin, it used to be they got insulin from cows. And now all insulin is from a genetically modified fungus or bacteria.
Really?
And so insulin is cheap. And we wouldn't have that but for the genetic modification that they did. We entered into a new wave with the CRISPR thing, and suddenly the genetic modification process was a hell of a lot easier to do, and it's the potential for abuse is absolutely there. So it's not a concern. But for us here on Maui, I wasn't really so motivated by the worry over of consuming a genetically modified crop. But other people, wow, we won. And I tried my best in all of our media not to play up that fear. We were fact-based. We didn't make things up. We didn't sensationalize. We absolutely stuck with what was provable and a reasonable call for a moratorium. Again, we didn't have the information, still don't, to call for a ban, an outright ban, but we could call for a temporary cessation, a moratorium, so that a safety study could be conducted. And that's always a reasonable thing. A tree could fall through your house and land on you right now. It could happen. And, so no one is 100% safe. We weren't calling for 100% safe. We wanted to know the relative safety of what they were doing, because all of it was uncharted territory. And so it was a delicate matter of crafting our literature and our message.
Very delicate.
So that we didn't sensationalize. We wanted to be real. Now, there were a lot of people that were engaged in the process because of their, to me, an unreasonable fear of all things genetically modified. That's why we won, because those people existed. I absolutely wouldn't deny that. I think that a lot of people engaged and participated in our political action because of their unreasonable fears. But we didn't want to. I certainly didn't want to play that card to find our success.
Well, speaking of playing cards, though, Monsanto had quite a budget to play with for that campaign. Once the initiative got on the ballot, their bottom line was threatened tremendously by this kind of action. How much actually did they end up spending on an island of about 80,000 people? How much did they spend?
It was the most ever for a local initiative in the history of the United States. And I don't know that it's been surpassed. In 2014, we did this, and I don't know that it's been surpassed. They spent on the books over $12 million.
Wow.
For we had what, 46,000 people voting in the actual election. And so they spent $12 million, and that's on the books. I can't tell you how many politicians local politicians were all of a sudden driving fancy cars, because they probably spent close to the same amount of money off the book, under the table, paying off politicians. We even had a mayor who got on television and said, if this moratorium, if this farm ban, that's what we were labeled by them.
Yeah.
If this farm ban goes through, then the county is going to have to come and inspect your garden in your backyard, and your dog eating dog food that includes genetically modified soybeans, those soybeans are going to crap through your dog, and they're going to be found in your garden, and we're going to have to confiscate your garden. Who in their rational mind could, that's Trumpian, man. That is like,
they're spending $12 million to make that case. You can arguably make that case. So, again, you want to be humble about what you've done here in Maui, but considering the fact that you were the communication digital media director of the organization, to have the other side spend over $12 million to beat you, and you end up winning that campaign. Kudos to you, Sam Small. You did a fantastic job. You deserve a big pat on the back for that.
I appreciate that. I'm very proud of the work that we did, and what we did as a community, because I handled the media. I didn't go out. We had events and rallies, and I would go to the rally because I was filming the rally. So we're out there with the cameras and everything that we could to capture the energy of what was going on. But I didn't get to participate, waving back at people. Thank you for being here. But other people staged those marches, and other people we had. And it was more than one organization, because we were deemed as, radical liberal hippies and not inaccurate. And so there were portions of our community that wanted nothing to do with us.
Sure.
The Shaka movement had a brand, and we actively cultivated that. And so that brand was not appropriate for every community group on our island. Church groups would not allow us to speak. The Rotary clubs did not allow us to speak. The Chamber of Commerce wanted nothing to do with us. Those are all relatively more conservative organizations, business-minded. And so we had individuals that I collaborated with on developing presentation materials, but they took those presentation materials, put their own stamp on it, and they were able, therefore, because they weren't us, they were able to get access to those other local community groups to be able to make our case to segments of our community that I couldn't access as the Shaka movement. And that was absolutely integral. They went door to door. They organized on their own, separate from us. And they, everybody had to deal with their own spending, because you're dealing with a campaign, and those dollars need to be attributed with the campaign spending commission. You got to file reports. We had a PAC. I created a super PAC as well. And so there were several organizations that were involved in this that made this happen locally. Autumn Ray Ness did an absolute masterful job of getting the word out. Lauren Rigo, Babes Against Biotech, was another active organization that helped organize the rallies. And they all just did fantastic work. We had public officials. Dr. Lauren Pang is a local epidemiologist that's been insane with the COVID thing, but really helping our community stay focused on what the actual risks to us were. And so we had, good, really qualified people. And we had local Hawaiians, which you have to have here in Hawaii, because I'm a haole. Who the fuck wants to listen to me?
Right. And it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't just a group of hippies or anything like that wanted this done on Maui. It was causing birth defects to local residents and stuff like that. They're spraying so many chemicals, and sometimes like right next to a school. I know on Kauai that was a huge problem.
And that was part of the discussion, is those buffer zones, and it's also if you're dealing with this issue specifically, the buffer zones is bullshit. They'll come up, we gave you 125 yard, buffer zone. Bullshit. When they're spraying that stuff, that 125 yard, that meaningless, absolutely meaningless. And if the stuff gets into the water supply, even more meaningless. Those buffer zones are a joke. But they offer that, we do that for you, we're going to give you a buffer zone. Nah, forget about it.
Was there any hope that the Maui County Council would have passed this resolution?
No, given the way that our Maui County Council has historically sided with corporate big money interests. No, we didn't have a shot in hell of them getting on board with us. We had to do the ballot initiative. We had to get, put people out there with petitions. And that's why I appreciate what you're doing, because it was not easy for us, to be successful. We were the first and so far the only successful ballot initiative on Maui. We had the formula. At the time, I think we had 84,000 residents, so we had to come up with like 1/4 of that in terms of signatures. And the signatures all had to be controlled. They all had to be, residents. So it had to, the information that they put on the ballot initiative, that they put on our petition, had to jive with their active voter registration here locally. So we had to coordinate that. The actual petitions, the physical pieces of paper that people had to sign, could not leave the possession of the petition handler. They had
so they couldn't be passed around. Sure.
Could not be passed. You couldn't leave the clipboard at the health food store. No, somebody had to take responsibility for that stack. They were all numbered. We even got, I think the county gave us the actual paper ballots. They provided the paper ballots. We couldn't print our own. They provided the paper ballots, and the petition handler had to have chain of custody over those clipboards for the entire time. And then they had to have that stack of paper notarized, and their affidavit that this has never left my possession. I can certify that these are actual signatures. And then that had to be properly notarized. Only then would the county clerk take those signatures and process them and cross-check them against their active voter records. And so our failure rate was between 51 and 52%. More just,
I can imagine. Yes, it's expensive and a commitment not to try to succeed at something like that.
So you got to submit double the number of petition signatures to be able to survive that the threshold.
Right.
Had to put in like 40,000 signatures to be able to get 21.
Yeah, that's it's more than just one clipboard. So
A lot of
we were talking about we're pushing this, and uh, that people get out there, take a look at the initiative process in your communities. There's 24 states in the country that offer initiative at the state level. Hawaii is not one of them, but you
right.
do have it at the county level.
Yep.
So among those 24 states, there's still other states out there that do have maybe city or county initiative processes. And we've got a lot of people out there. One of the things that really bothered us during the Occupy Wall Street movement days, about 10 years ago, was that we wasted a lot of gas in the fuel tank, trying to get out there, doing a lot of marches. People only have so much energy that they can devote towards things.
Sure.
And I'm not really sure why the initiative process wasn't jumping out to us at the time, because it really does take away the necessity to ask for permission. Would you please pass this? Would you, it's a matter of the public deciding, okay, we want this on the ballot, and then putting it to a vote, not asking for permission. And that's where a lot of efforts do seem to kind of implode, is you either run out of energy, and you never cross the finish line, or you just never get it in writing. You got to get it passed.
It's a long haul. We modeled ourselves after Jackson County, Oregon, that had successfully created also. I don't know if they did a ban. I think they did an outright ban of genetically modified crops within their community, and they went through a very similar public ballot process. And what we learned from them was, one of the things that's like super important is the language that actually goes on the ballot. If you're successful, I mean, there's different ways that they can try and blow you up. They can outrageously deny your signatures and toss out all your signatures as not being valid. And then if you are successful, you still very often have to get through. And here it was our county clerk who actually writes the language that goes on the ballot and that gets advertised by the county as part of the election process. You can suggest language, but the county clerk has the authority. And in Jackson County, they didn't like the language that the county clerk came up with. They didn't feel that it accurately they felt it was prejudicial against the success of their bill. And so they challenged it. And that created a delay. It was a 2-year delay. They got the initiative. They were successful in getting the initiative on the ballot, but the challenge of the language resulted that they missed the most recent election, and it had to wait. And in that time, they got a judge to write the ballot language so that it was neutral, at least, because their county, had written language that was prejudicial. And they very clearly acknowledged that 2-year gap gave them the opportunity to educate their community. Had they gone to election right away, they don't think that they would have been successful. But they used that 2 years to educate their community. It was a strategy. And I tried to push it here on Maui. It's like, hey, we could easily object to the ballot language that our county clerk wrote. But I couldn't get anybody on board because everybody was like, no, we have to do this now. Our kids are, at risk and we need to know now. And it's like, okay, I who knew that we would be successful? You could blow me over with a feather.
I don't think anybody did until the vote was cast. I think a lot of people on election night were just stunned at what had happened.
Totally stunned. Total shock. and completely unprepared for what came next. And this was really an important thing, and it affected me deeply personally, because like I said, there were four of us. There were four of us that were the heart of the Chaka movement and got this whole thing going. And we were so busy organizing and doing that we needed to reach out to other people in the community to write our bylaws, to create the PAC, and to do a lot of the additional organizational work that needs to be done. And we screwed up. We allowed somebody to write the bylaws of our membership organization, and they did not write it as empowering the membership to once a year take control of the board of directors, dissolve the board of directors, and through an election process, vote in a new board of directors. We did not have that authority, and we didn't know at the time that we screwed up. And what happened, we talked about this being a brand that we created. Well, after we were successful, two individuals took over the entire organization. I was released from my position retroactively. I only heard about it in December, that as of November, my services were no longer required. And I was paid, I was the most, because I'm providing a professional service. I mean, if you look at the vote,
sure.
That's good work. And by virtue of my skills electronically and being able to handle all of that stuff, on my desktop, to be able to produce television commercials and documentaries, and it requires some skill. But we lost control of our own organization. We built a worldwide brand. You mentioned whatever happened to it? Well, they pissed it away. They used it for their own personal benefit to get invited to parties in Hollywood and hobnob, and they've done jack shit since. And
I think we've seen some other groups do that too. And again, I think that's where it's quite possible that representative democracy has run its course, and maybe the best thing to do in the future is more of this direct action, where we can do stuff like this and create laws ourselves, because the politicians definitely don't seem to be doing the right thing. If anything, they seem to be doing the opposite.
It's a function of late stage capitalism. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe with all the passion and enthusiasm that you guys had out there for, this particular ballot issue, that any of the elected officials would find any political cover in taking an opposing position. It's amazing how much opposition they can withstand when they're supposed to be representing us.
Yeah,
it's kind of stunning.
The agricultural interests, Monsanto is still here, although they've phased out. They were doing a very big portion of their corn hybridization. They were growing one, when you grow hybrid corn, you grow one seed of a variety, you grow another seed variety, then you plant those two, and the cross-pollinate those two, and the hybrid seed offspring of those two is what they sell on the market. So
Right.
they were producing one of those varieties here on Maui, and after all of the shit that we gave them, they pulled out, and they found other places to grow their seeds. So their operation here on Maui, I understand, is a lot less intensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
But they still, want that control. They don't want to give up that control. Maui is an extraordinary place. We had we have these injection wells, and they take the cess and they actually dilute it with a tremendous amount of fresh water, and they pump that down into the aquifer, and it leaches out into the ocean. And the problem, and so that becomes a problem for the reefs in that area that's receiving this leachate. And it's not so much that the leachate has all of this nitrogen and stuff in it. It's that it actually is too clean. There's too much fresh water that's being artificially introduced into those local reefs environments that don't normally get fresh water.
Wow.
And it changes. So it's actually, it's counterintuitive. It's not that our injection wells are dirty. It's that the injection wells are introducing clean water where no clean water is supposed to be.
Right.
And so that was a big, national test case. It went to the Supreme Court because outside influences understood that Maui could be a test case to undercut the Clean Water Act. And what they wanted to do, what they wanted to say was that you could run a chemical line up until like 10 feet from the ocean. And because there was this 10-foot gap, that they were not responsible for the leachate getting to the ocean because they stopped their delivery just short of the ocean. And they were trying to say that that's okay and that you don't need a permit to do that.
Right.
Which is, patently absurd. But they got to the Supreme Court with tremendous amount of outside money. Maui County tried to defend what they were doing, screwing us. They were trying to defend what they were doing in the Supreme Court using our tax dollars. Well, I got it. It's my understanding that that a lot of the money that went to that effort did not come from the taxpayers. They couldn't justify, the expense of writing up all of that stuff. Outside money was interested in using Maui to be able to eviscerate the Clean Water Act nationally. And thank God
it is a representative democracy for them, but
exactly. And the mayor gets a fancy car.
Right. And that's just speech these days. So not bribery, just speech. Now that actually kind of brings up the next thing that we've got some time left here today, roughly about 15 minutes, a little bit more than that.
I have a feeling you and I can figure out how to fill that time.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was the action that's still needed out there. And if you guys are planning on utilizing the initiative process for that, we've got the friend that was able to institute online signature gathering out in Boulder. It might be the first place in the world where we have that ability to do that. Hopefully that would make something like that a lot easier out there. And we have the ballot initiative for you to use that. You mentioned the timing of elections being a couple years away. Trying to get an initiative on the ballot for this November is pretty tough. But if you're thinking out there, people who might be watching this, about issues that you might be able to put on the ballot, the timing of this, you've got a full 2.5 years before the next election that you can actually gain some steam in that time.
In terms of a ballot initiative as it stands today, that's not a lot of time, because you have to, each step of the process has to, eats up the clock. So you have to register. You've got to, register your ballot initiative. You need a board of directors or 8 people or something to actually register for the ballot initiative. Then they give you paper and you collect ballots, and then they have a period of time, another 60 days or something, to vet your signatures. And then you get an opportunity to add supplemental signatures, and then they vet those signatures. And the whole thing has to go before the county council too, because they have to have the opportunity to jump on board or not. And that eats up the clock. And then all of that has to be done before the ballot actually gets written and printed. So
Well,
there's 2 years
you're
is not
actually
a
touching on one of the huge advantages to doing this digital signature gathering is that as part of the registration on the website to sign the petition, you have to verify that you're a registered voter, and the system actually verifies everybody that's in there is in their proper jurisdiction and is verified as a legal voter before they can even participate in anything. So that would eliminate quite a lot of that burden right there in the
and
beginning.
it would, and for Maui, it would make it a tremendous advantage, because we have a lot of people that they say that their Maui home is their primary residence, but they're not here all the time.
Right.
So they technically are eligible to vote here, but they're not on the street. You can't, they don't go to the mall where you can stand with your petition, and get petition signatures from them. So being
Did
able
you
to
have
have those off-island residents would be tremendously valuable.
did you have instances where people that were signing those petitions felt pressure not to do that if they like had neighbors that worked for Monsanto, or was there pressure among people not to participate in this or not support it?
Well, yeah, because they're ultimately their signature and their name becomes public record.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Okay.
their signature on the ballot, is researchable if they wanted to, if Monsanto or an agricultural company operating locally wanted to create retribution against the people, they could. I think in some communities, yeah, people felt pressure to not to sign. We had let me where can I go that it's not so public, and sign your petition, so that nobody's going to see me signing your petition. We had some
Uh,
inquiries in that.
well, being on Hawaii, we would see ads that were meant for Maui residents. I think
Yeah.
that was the other thing, is that they had so much money to spend.
Well,
Everybody in the state was seeing
yeah,
their ads,
we
and
don't
they would
have
show
we
local
don't have we don't
residents
I'm
crying
sorry.
because you're getting rid of their jobs, and it was very dishonest stuff going on there.
Oh yeah, no, they created a ton of television commercials, and they created a 30-minute documentary of just filled with lies after lies after lies. And they aired that stuff constantly. It takes a while in a small market to spend $12 million. So
It
and
does.
and that was it was actually an advantage, because the general public, the feedback we got was like, you know what? They are saturating television. You could not watch a half-hour television show on any of the television channels in the entire state, because Maui doesn't have local TV. So
Right.
they had to buy television time on Oahu and pay for the millions of people that live on Oahu. They had to pay for those eyeballs to be able to get to our local eyeballs. And they
Right.
put on, you could not watch a half-hour television show at any time without seeing one of their 30-second commercials. And then every day they were buying half-hour blocks to run their half-hour infomercial that was just filled with lies. We sat down, the show that you were on was Maui Causes. It was a show that I did 99 episodes, just short of 100 episodes, on our local cable access channel, akaku.org. And all of those shows are still there. And all of those shows are listed on the Maui Causes website, if anybody's interested, mauicauses.org as well. We sat down, Joe Marshala and I, during the time we had a Shaka movement show a weekly show on local cable access. And we sat down, it was an hour-long show, and we sat down and we started to play their half-hour documentary and then stop it every time they said something that was a lie. And then we would talk about what the lie was. And so in our hour-long show we called Spot the Lie, we only got 15 minutes, not even 15 minutes into their half-hour show, because there were so many lies. Every 6 seconds, there was another lie and a misrepresentation that they were pumping out into the public, and that actually became a thing when the campaign spending. And this is a big thing. There's an interim report that the Campaign Finance Commission publishes. Before the end of voting, they show how much has been spent to date. And at the time, it was the report came out, it was $8 million. And we just, I was salivating for that number. And it's like, because I know the corporate mentality, they don't know how not to spend money. If as a corporate person, they have a responsibility to their corporate initiative to spend as much money as they possibly can. And I was waiting for that number to come out. And when it was $8 million, I was like, okay, off to the races, baby. Hey, Maui community, they're spending millions of dollars to influence our vote, 46,000 votes. They're spending millions of dollars. You don't have to spend that money if you're telling the truth. Right. You only have to spend that kind of money if you're lying. And
I remember across the state, people were nauseated by how much money had been spent. It was truly disgusting to a lot of people.
The funniest thing to happened in the whole thing is, I'm a media guy. I got a media production company. Maui Causes is my social activism thing, but I also have my own production company. Small Wonder Video Services.com is my personal website. And I've been doing media since 1979. It's the only work that I've ever done, teleproduction, and then the application of television as a web tool. So I've been riding that wave the entire time, and I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
You've been riding the wave. Well, we are actually coming up towards the end of the show here, so it's a good time to have that lapse. But I hope that there's people out there that are watching, and you have that production company there, and a lot of movements need all kinds of people. From all walks of life, and if you have a skill like that, hopefully you can bring your art to your cause and touch people's hearts with those kinds of things. So even if you're not a skilled politician, don't count yourself out as being a really integral part of what your community might need to make the changes that you're looking for as well.
Yeah, and the technology now is ubiquitous. Everybody's got a cell phone. You can, there's free video editing utilities online. There's free graphic production, free meme production. You can really dig in. You don't have to have the technology skills that I was fortunate to develop over an entire career of doing this stuff. You still need to be able to write a good sentence, and understand, what a basic communication does. But the technology is available that did not used to be available. You can conduct an entire campaign, from your laptop. I did it where I live. I'm kind of out in the sticks here on Maui. I only had a cell card. I didn't have DSL. I didn't have fast internet. My house was wired with copper pair wires. Dial-up is, up until like just 2 years ago, I finally got fiber optics. So I did that entire campaign using a Verizon cell card, uploading
Wow,
files and doing stuff. So
that's amazing.
yeah, you can get the job done. It was extraordinary. A lot of hours of just file upload and stuff like that. Videos are large files. And
Yeah,
if you're doing video, I got to tell you, just something to be aware of. In the video world, all of the video tools and all of the stuff, and it's the cameras and everything that's modern is all talking about 4K or 8K. It is absolute overkill. Those files are massive, and it takes an extraordinary amount of time to process those large files for no good reason whatsoever. No good reason whatsoever. If you can scale down to the lower quality digital, 1920 by 1080 is absolutely sufficient for any online purpose. And you do not have to do 4K. It's stupid. Don't waste your time, money,
yep.
or
I've got a
something that's
1080
4K.
camera right there right now. So
Right.
looks good. All right, that's just fine. Plus, you don't want to look at me in detail that close.
I don't want to see that.
I have not aged as well. Well, again, Sam, I really appreciate you coming on, letting me put you in the spotlight, letting me embarrass you a little bit here,
No problem.
and give you some credit, really, for doing
Thank you. I
an
appreciate
incredible
that.
thing.
Let me give one more nugget, because what we're doing currently here on Maui has to do with a 40-year history of abuse in land development. One of the most valuable resources that there exists on Maui is oceanfront property. And so you can imagine how much graft and corruption is associated with individual developers buying an oceanfront lot and then building a massive fucking home on that lot and subverting every rule that is designed to protect us, the community and our environment, to violate our rights. Oceanfront property is specifically part of what is called a special management area. The federal government mandates that the state have a process by which the local community can weigh in on any development that's taking place in a special management area. And we've had for decades a very fractured process between our public works department and our planning department. There's no cross checking that's done, and loopholes that are phenomenally wide that allow a developer in the know to lie and get away with it and subvert our rights. And we're finally at a place, the magical place, where we have one agency within our local county government, and they are actually taking on another agency within our local county government, and they are saying, hey, you know what? These community people are right, and what you are doing is not right, and you can't get better than that. The only way that the best way to win is to get a government agency agreeing with you and backing you, because they've got unlimited dollars and they've got a power and authority that a community group just doesn't have. And we have crossed that threshold. We now have an active, we have a proposal to actually launch an active investigation into corruption of our public works and planning departments. It's freaking beautiful. And
I love that.
It's fantastic. I mean, we've crossed a threshold that's never been crossed here locally. The council members didn't even know they had this power. We had to educate them that you actually can issue subpoenas, to county employees, and they have to come testify in front of you. That they didn't even know that they had the authority to do that. So you have to do your homework. Your local, our county council members are completely ignorant of what their job really is and what resources are available to them, and we had to educate them. And only because it's now election year that they avoided this stuff for the past 18 months. Only now that it's election year are they actually listening to us, and we've got this agency working on our behalf.
Amazing. Well, we have the links down below in the show description, so definitely click on there. If you have any comments, leave them down there. Subscribe to the show. Once again, aloha. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next week.
Thanks for doing what you're doing. It's needed.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.